Graham Plattner's candidacy in Maine, taking on some water. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent went to Capitol Hill and took no prisoners. And one of President Trump's biggest critics looks like he's about to be hoisted by his own petard, as they say. I'll tell you what a petard is in just a minute. It's Friday, June 5th, and this is news from America's Heartland. You're watching Heartlander News. Welcome into Heartlander News. Hope you're doing well today. I'm Chris Stigall. I want to start today by discussing what is still the ongoing election in California, days after Election Day. As of Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, in the mayor's race, the top two vote getters were incumbent Mayor Karen Bass and the outsider, the challenger we've been covering here, Spencer Pratt. And when the initial count looked like it would be the two of them, here's a little bit of what Pratt had to say.
Tonight.
Well, obviously God wanted 5 more months of me exposing all the failures of our mayor. So it's going to be a fun ride. I hope she's ready.
Are you ready?
I mean, I was born for this, clearly.
Well, there's no doubt that he has the stamina for another 5 months. But do the Democrats? It looks like maybe they're already signaling no, they'd rather put this to bed now. Some 24,000 ballots came pouring in just one evening recently this week. Not a one for Pratt. Imagine this. Not just weeks, but months of extra time before Spencer Pratt and Steve Hilton face their final opponents in the runoff. And what that really means for California, if in fact the rest of the country is watching, if in fact this holds and Pratt is correct, people like Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom have had total control in the governor's office, the legislature, major cities, just about every level of power in the state. The Democrats have controlled it all. And what do we have to show for it? Well, nothing. We have all seen the reality of Los Angeles streets through endless news reports and videos taken by people actually living there. Homeless encampments stretching for blocks, businesses operating behind locked doors in broad daylight. Families changing their daily routines because places that once felt safe no longer do. Skyrocketing costs, open hostility to job creators. Californians are being pushed out of the state they love. Not to mention the wildfires, met with total inaction, budgets that are ballooning out of control, basic services collapsing. Californians have been told for decades that every problem is someone else's fault. It's Washington's fault, it's Republicans' fault, it's capitalism's fault, it's climate change's fault, it's COVID's fault. But at some point, voters have to ask themselves the obvious question. If Democrats have run this state top to bottom for years, who exactly is left to blame? So this long runoff process is giving the two challengers, Hilton and Pratt, if successful and they can stave off the fraud, and I'll get to that in a minute, if they can stave off the fraud, this long runoff gives these two challengers more time. And that's what Democrats are terrified about. That's why we're seeing, I believe, some rigging going on in real time this week. But forcing these people who built this disastrous record to defend it out in the open for a few more months, that's the last thing Democrats want to do. Spencer Pratt lost his home in the Palisades fire. He has not been holding back on that, as we've chronicled here. His brilliant, often AI-powered ads have gone viral because they show the tent cities, the failing schools, the dangerous and filthy streets, the waste. It's all shown for exactly what it is. These ads cut through the ignorance is bliss mindset of California Democrats and expose the reality. These ads are so devastatingly effective, in fact, they're going to change, I believe, how conservatives campaign in blue cities and states from now on. Steve Hilton, meanwhile, the former businessman and true outsider, gets extra months to travel the state. From Central Valley farms strangled by bad water rules to Inland Empire families crushed by housing prices, laying out exactly how one-party rule produced record exodus of people and business, plus policy failures that hurt the very people they claimed to help. You know, this is about Republican policies versus Democrat policies when it's all said and done. Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom, they've had years to govern. Spencer Pratt and Steve Hilton need just a few more months to make the case against their record of failure and corruption. Because more sunlight on California politics will hurt Democrats everywhere. You built it, you ran it, you own it, Democrats. Now defend it. And that's exactly what this extended time does, this runoff into the fall. It's real accountability, civic oxygen. It puts the burden back where it belongs, on the people who've held the power. More honest debate serves Californians and gives the whole country an unfiltered look at what one-party rule actually produces. A runoff will deliver the reckoning this state has needed for a long time. So let the ads keep running. Let the tough questions keep coming. The people deserve the full, unvarnished truth before they decide. But again, the only thing standing in the way of all of that right now, the very real risk of election fraud. It's taking California an extraordinarily long time to count all the votes. California's so-called voting process isn't democracy. It's a slow-motion disaster, and it's designed for delay and deception and fraud. This is the state that mails ballots to every single registered voter like confetti. No questions asked. Ballots trickle in for days, even weeks after Election Day. They sit in piles while armies of Democrats verify signatures that don't have to match exactly. They just have to be close enough. Loose, subjective checks at best. Curing periods that let operatives fix problems long after the polls closed, that's rife for fraud, obviously. And the counting, well, that drags on for days too, sometimes weeks in the nation's most corrupt state. While the rest of the country knows who won by Wednesday, California still seems to be processing mountains of late mail-ins in the dark. And of course, it's not incompetence. It's a feature of single-party rule, as I was just mentioning. A system built for opacity here, where initial election night tallies get buried under waves of mysterious ballots that magically shifts outcomes. No real proof of citizenship required up front, of course. No strict photo ID at the point of voting. Just trust us, they say, as results drip out in a Democrat stronghold long after the spotlight fades. This is an invitation to fraud, of course, an invitation to manipulation, to every conspiracy theory you can imagine. And they've earned every bit of that skepticism, by the way. Other countries, whole countries, count their votes overnight with far less drama. California can't manage it in the modern age. It's pretty pathetic and revealing. It's a failed state embarrassment that erodes trust in every American election it touches, and this circus has got to end. It's why, by the way, the Senate has to pass the Save America Act right now, and sadly, 4 Republicans blew that yesterday. It demands, the Save Act, proof of citizenship to register, photo ID to vote. It slams the brakes on unlimited mail-in free-for-alls. It forces elections back into the light, secure, verifiable, and finished on time. Listen, if we don't pass the Save America Act, the Democrat Party will keep killing democracy in the darkness, as they used to say at the Washington Post. They will continue to hide behind endless counts, unverifiable ballots, and excuses until the people's will is nothing but a memory. It can't happen anymore, folks. Secure our elections already, or we watch the Republic die by 1,000 delayed ballots. The time is now, Republicans. It's an 80-20 issue. We're all watching and we're all waiting. Meanwhile, the Democrats don't have much of a candidate bench at all on any front, whether it's nationally, whether it's state by state. Certainly in Maine, we see the trouble. The Wall Street Journal with the story that, oh my, this Graham Plattner. I don't know if you've been following the story, but old Graham, there is a new story out that old Graham Plattner, the guy with the Nazi tattoo for 12 15 years. I don't know. He had a Nazi tattoo on his chest for a very long time, then covered it up. Said it was a drunken accident because, again, who amongst us doesn't get liquored up and tattoo Nazi propaganda on our chests? Graham Plattner is now being accused by an ex of being physically abusive. And this is quite remarkable. The Democrats now find themselves in a position of not only defending Nazi tattoos, but abuse of women. So let's go to it. Old Graham sits down with Chris Hayes. You're not going to find a cushier softball interview than Chris Hayes for a subject like this over at MS Now. Let's get into it.
And I think voters have a right to know about it. And I want to start with what Ms. Fifield says about being rough is the term the Times. And I'm going to just read you the account so you have it. This is from the Times. Mr. Plattner could be rough with her, Ms. Fifield said, particularly when they were drinking, leaving her shaken and sometimes afraid. In the interviews, she grappled with how to process her experiences. She was quick to note, he never hit me, never punched me. She said he regularly grabbed her by the shoulders, sometimes hard enough to leave marks. On one occasion, yanked her out of a cab by her wrist after an argument in which she wanted to stay in the car. During one argument, she recalled he twisted her arm behind her back, shoved her into a bedroom, and held the door closed from the other side so she couldn't get out, telling her to remain there until she was calm. Eventually, Ms. Fifield said she fell asleep and left the next morning. It hurt, she said, but she added, it didn't cause any injury. It didn't break my arm. Did that happen?
No, it did not. There are some allegations in this piece that I just want to be kind of unequivocal about are simply not true. Anything alleging physicality, anything alleging that I knew what my tattoo was, these are the statements of someone who's politically motivated. In this piece, there's a lot about my struggling, not being a good boyfriend, certainly self-medicating with alcohol. And I've been very upfront since the beginning of this campaign that was a pretty dark period of my life after I came back from my combat service. And that's what that kind of life looks like. And so there are things in this that I absolutely will take responsibility for and have been speaking about openly for months now. But those serious allegations are just not true.
Well, look, as someone who is very, very sensitive and aware of what it is to battle with things like alcoholism, I don't discount or dismiss his sincerity in having battled something and slain that dragon. But the left has always had the perspective of believe all women, right? If a woman shows up and says it, it's true. Now, of course, that's not most normal people's position, but that has always been the American left's position. And I think Chris Hayes knows that. That's why he continues to press on this, interestingly. Again, this is MS Now. This is the friendliest place Graham Plattner's ever going to find himself in a media interview. And old Chris Hayes isn't letting him up off the mat. Again, the New York Times piece, several women who dated Graham Plattner recall unsettling behavior. Several women. This is the New York Times. And folks, it is a lengthy piece if you care to read it. I don't do a lot of salacious gossip here, but I will just say it is chock-a-block full of interviews with 24 people, including 6 women who have been romantically involved with Mr. Plattner. They spoke with friends, acquaintances. Several of the women reviewed contemporaneous texts and social media messages, and saw some of the diary entries of this particular woman in question that you just heard them discussing. Mr. Plattner declined to be interviewed for the New York Times article. The women described difficult relationships with Plattner. They knew him at different points in his life. Let's see. Well, let's continue with the Chris Hayes line of questioning, shall we? Talking about the messages. Sometimes, let's say salty messages to women, maybe unwanted messages to women, maybe graphic messages to women, and maybe underage women.
Just to be clear, just about revisiting, right? I mean, I think channeling concerns, I think, of Democratic voters and Democratic officials and a lot of people, right? That it's not a question of revisiting, right? It's new revelations, like vis-a-vis, texts or pictures. And I know you want to give some privacy in marriage, but I really do feel like I need to get these answers from you, which is like the people you were texting with, whatever that was, in whatever context they were adult women, you knew that, and it was consensual. Is that true?
Yes.
And you have that you confirmed that you knew their age.
Yes. Oh God. I mean, yeah. Yes, of course.
I don't know. Aaron, does again, there's no place that wants this to be true more than Chris Hayes and MS Now. Do you get the impression Chris Hayes is even buying this?
No. And the mere fact, like, if you're being questioned about this kind of stuff, I think the battle's already lost. Like, something went wrong somewhere.
And don't misunderstand. In no way am I laughing at any of the allegations. I'm laughing at the behavior here from Graham Plattner and Chris Hayes, who this is violently uncomfortable because this guy knows. He knows the New York Times piece is like a catalog of abuse and alleged abuse, not to mention what he's admitted to. And Hayes is like, dude, even I, as partisan and in the tank as I am, even I am not going to be able to let you skate with this. This continues, this very awkward exchange.
You know, the Times basically reported that they saw texts of hers, including a text in August, I believe August 3rd of last year. This would be before October of last year, in which she basically said that you had a, quote, Nazi tattoo, and she joked about how she's going to go volunteer for Collins. Now, again, this is a text that got sent, so like we can place the time, right? This is in August. How does she know it's a Nazi tattoo in August of last year, and you don't know it's a Nazi tattoo in August of last year?
Well, she certainly didn't send that text to me. So whoever she sent it to and was talking to, that's I can't say why, but I will say that I certainly didn't know. And the text messages she's sending to friends who may have recognized it, they didn't tell me that. So.
Are you tracking with this? He had a girlfriend who knew well before he did he had a Nazi tattoo on his chest. People were discussing it was a Nazi tattoo. He claims that the text from the girlfriend is a text with other people, not him. So while his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, and maybe other people she was texting with all were discussing Graham Plattner's Nazi tattoo, he himself was still completely unaware that the tattoo on his chest for many, many years, well over a decade, was a Nazi tattoo. Is the incredulity meter starting to spike for you? I hope so. Graham Plattner promises, though, don't worry. This is it now. This is surely the last you're going to have to worry about hearing any kind of unsavory behavior or trouble. The Nazi tattoo, the potential beating of women, the appendage pics to minors, allegedly. That's probably it. We're pretty sure now. Future Senator Plattner wants you to know we're probably out of the woods.
Are there texts of yours, pictures of yours floating around out there, which, again, maybe from a time capsule, but people, I think, are understandably a little nervous. Maybe you'll be the nominee, probably be the nominee for the Maine Senate on Tuesday. And then it's October 10th. And here's a text or picture of Graham Plattner that is not the kind of thing that you want to see. Like, are you worried about that? Are there texts like that?
I'm not worried about it. I mean, I went, as I've talked to him, I went through my life through a number of years struggling and not exactly acting with the best behavior. I've been very, very open about that. And if people would like to continue to drag things up from that time in my life, I'm sure that we are going to see at some point somebody attempt to do exactly that.
We wish Mr. Plattner all the best in his future endeavors. Moving on to John Bolton, the mustachioed John Bolton, formerly of President Trump's first term, author of a well-regarded memoir. The Wall Street Journal editorial board just loves John Bolton, and they're very upset that old John is about to plead guilty to the very thing that he was out cheerleading happened to Donald Trump. Let's go back. Let's jump in the Wayback Machine and rewind to June 2023. This is number 24 here, Aaron, if you would, please. John Bolton was confident once upon a time on CNN that Donald Trump should go to jail after they raided Mar-a-Lago.
You know, Republicans used to believe that not prosecuting criminals led to more crime. The answer here is take the politics out of the decision, and in this case, proceed with the prosecution and do the same for anybody else who does anything even remotely like it. Just read the indictment and ask yourself, if the government can prove what they allege here, shouldn't this man go to jail? The simple fact he had the documents for any reason or no reason should subject him to prosecution. You know,
It's interesting then that the Wall Street Journal thinks that President Trump and his DOJ are being vindictive to poor Mr. Bolton now. Like similar defendants, Mr. Bolton has had little choice other than to negotiate a plea. Mr. Bolton deciding to plead guilty to a single felony count for retaining classified information. He will pay a $2.5 million fine, which is best understood as an attempt to deny Mr. Bolton the earnings from the book that he wrote. It's especially troubling and vindictive that justice is still insisting that Mr. Bolton go to prison. Oh, bless John Bolton's heart. And the Wall Street Journal, very upset for old John and his mustache. Here's Kash Patel talking about Bolton, number 25.
What is your response to the potential guilty plea and to the accusations that this was not about the facts, but about a persecution?
Well, speaking generally about retribution, what we do at the FBI and our partners at the Department of Justice is we don't reverse engineer prosecutions or investigations. We get the facts, we apply the law. And in the case of Mr. Bolton, we went to a judge, met the probable cause standard, raided his house, obtained information, went before a grand jury. That grand jury said through their voice that there was enough information to charge Mr. Bolton with illegally possessing classified materials. And whether or not he pleads guilty, like any other defendant charged in this country, is entirely up to him. So we'll see what he decides to do. But there's been a sufficiency of credible evidence to make that charge. And now he will have his day in court.
What is your response to the potential?
Yeah, and that's an important thing to point out. A grand jury looked at the evidence and found there was a reason to move forward. This was not just arbitrarily decided by Donald Trump or Kash Patel or DOJ. A judge and a grand jury both signed off on this. And again, let's just remember the very simple standard that every one of Donald Trump's former allies, then turn enemies, turncoats, like Bolton, they all said it. You had the clip. Let's go back and live by John Bolton's old standard. If we could play that again, Aaron, if you don't mind, let's go back and listen to what John Bolton said in 2023 about what should happen to Donald Trump, that he was in possession of anything deemed classified, even though the president himself can declassify or classify anything he wishes, setting that aside. But remember what Bolton said should happen to President Trump back then.
You know, Republicans used to believe that not prosecuting criminals led to more crime. The answer here is take the politics out of the decision, and in this case, proceed with the prosecution and do the same for anybody else who does anything even remotely like it. Just read the indictment and ask yourself, if the government can prove what they allege here, shouldn't this man go to jail? The simple fact he had the documents for any reason or no reason should subject him to prosecution.
Yeah, but the Wall Street Journal, bless them, bless their hearts, they don't be too hard on old John. It seems vindictive that Trump is doing this to poor John. Well, I don't know about vindictive, but if we're holding everyone to that same standard of justice that he was just talking about, then that's what we're watching. I don't think it's about vindictiveness, but this is the kind of thing, you know, when I talk to people and they watch what we saw happen to Donald Trump when that pretend president was in power, when we watched the lawfare, the 90 plus counts thrown at Donald Trump, the mugshot, the whole thing, when we watched all of that, when we were going through all of that as a nation, I didn't see any Wall Street Journal editorial board write-ups about how people needed to not be so vindictive to Donald Trump. And, you know, America's electorate has had their say, and Donald Trump has paid the price. He's no longer president, and shouldn't that be enough? No. None of these people were standing up for Donald Trump. But now all of a sudden, all of the people that were stabbing him in the back and cheerleading the effort when the husk was pretending to be president, Now all of a sudden, and even supposedly these Republican types, which, by the way, this is all part and parcel of the same thing. John Bolton, the Wall Street Journal editorial board, some of these senators yesterday who scuttled the SAVE Act. I talked about that earlier. There were 4, Murkowski, Collins, Tillis of North Carolina, and McConnell, the turtle. Those are the 4 that yesterday just said what 80% of this country wants can't happen. And that is verifying who you are, producing ID, verifying you are a legal citizen to vote in the United States. 4 Republican senators stood in the way of that. 6 GOP senators have voted to block Trump's White House ballroom, sponsored by a Democrat. The amendment would have given Congress sole authority to construct a new ballroom and would have barred any federal funds or private donations from being used to build the new ballroom without congressional approval. Who signed off on the opposition? Susan Collins of Maine, John Husted of Ohio, Jerry Moran of Kansas, Murkowski of Alaska, Sullivan, Alaska, and Tom Tillis. The amendment proposed during something called a vote-a-rama on Republican reconciliation on the immigration funding bill, which needed 60 votes to overcome a point of order objection. It failed 52-47. Collins, Husted, and Sullivan face tough re-elections this fall. So, and then you have 3 GOP senators have voted to bar Bill Pulte. Bill Cassidy, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski voted to block William Pulte from serving as the temporary director of national intelligence while he serves as the Federal Housing Finance Agency director under Donald Trump. So I just point these things out to you. The Democrats, as unbelievable and audacious as they are with people like Graham Plattner, the frustrating thing for conservatives, Trump voters, Republicans is we still have the likes of these handful that refuse to do the people's business in the Senate. It's a very difficult thing. People like Susan Collins, who refuse to do the will of the people, up against a guy with a Nazi tattoo who allegedly abuses women and sends naked pics of himself to minors, allegedly. Susan Collins is so infuriating and so ineffective and so willing to do the people's business. A Nazi tattooed, alleged potential abuser of women might actually have a shot. That's where we are. Think of that. It's extremely frustrating. Meanwhile, Todd Blanche has been nominated by Donald Trump to be the next attorney general. I think it's a sound pick. We wish, I think from the jump, that he had been the pick or someone else other than Pam Bondi had been the pick at attorney general. But here we are. Speaking of President Trump yesterday, having a little fun. He was in a particularly good mood from the Oval, had the press come in. They discussed the Bidens for a while. We've been talking this week about the Biden book tour. Jill Biden's been out there. I'd still love to see the sales numbers. I might have to look that up in a minute, see how old Jill's books are selling. I don't know if it might take a week to report. Anyway, President Trump was asked about Hunter Biden. Hunter potentially running in 2028. I guess people are floating this as a potential thing. Hunter Biden 2028. Here's how Trump answered that.
And he has suggested, maybe joking, I don't know, that he could run for president in 2028. How would he do, Hunter Biden, in a 2028 Democratic primary?
Well, you would think that, past has something to do with winning an election. And I would say his past is not the greatest. Where's Hunter? Remember my Where's Hunter? It became the #1 shirt anywhere in the world for about 3 weeks. I'm not going to say bad. I'm sure, hey, if the guy from Maine can do well, I guess Hunter could do well too, because the guy from Maine is a basket case. And I would say worse than him is the one from Texas that looks like Alfred E. Newman. I would say that if he can do well, maybe Hunter can do well. I'm not sure. It'll be pretty close as far as I'm concerned.
Trump having a little fun, taking a couple of bank shots while he's at it at Tallarico down there in Texas and Graham Plattner. And then Trump was asked about Jill out there promoting her book, Dr. Jill. And here's how that went.
Is out promoting a new book this week. When you met with Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, right here in the Oval Office on November the 13th of 2024, could you detect any cognitive decline in President Biden at that time?
No, not really. I mean, he was the same guy I've been watching for a long time. I mean, you could go back 40 years. I watched him 40 years ago, 30 years ago. He's never the sharpest guy. You do know that, right? It wasn't like he was sharp as a tack. But no, it was the same guy. They actually invited me here before the election, which was strange. You know, we went here before, but then I met also, as you know, we did the ritual. And I mean, he was fine as far as I was concerned. I don't know, something happened to him during the debate. It could have been me. You know, I thought I had a very good debate. Nobody ever says that. They say that Biden did badly. What about me? Did I do well? You know, there's a reason he did badly. So the question is, did he do badly because he choked or because he didn't have it? But he didn't have a good, I would say this, he did not have a good night.
But during that time period, you met with him for about 2 hours. You didn't feel he was...
No, he spoke softly, very softly. And as we started to speak, I mentioned this to people, we spoke very, very softly, very low. And as we talked, we got along really well. And I thought he was fine. When I say fine, I mean, was he like talking to Doug Burgum? Was he like talking to Chris? Was he like talking to any of these monsters up here, all these tremendous politicians and environmental geniuses? Was he like talking to Andy Barr? No, he was fine.
Was talking to Joe Biden like talking to smart people? No, but he was fine. The delightful backhanded compliment from Donald Trump. That's entertaining on a Friday. I don't know who you are if you can't laugh at that. Harry Enton, the vaudevillian over at CNN. How I love you. Ha-cha-cha-cha-cha. He's like the WB Frog, this guy. He gets more animated. He's got a shtick now. You've watched him kind of, if you go back and watch old tape, he has not ratcheted this up to a 10 until recently. But anyway, here he is. Give me number 23 here, Aaron. Talking about the Bidens and the American public. This is why I want to know the book sales for Jill. I can't imagine they're great. Old Harry's got the numbers on how the American people feel about the Bidens after the fact.
American people have one message for the Bidens. That is, go away. Go away. I mean, just look at this. Look at Biden's net favorable rating. In January of 2025, it was minus 22 points. Has it gone any better? No, not really. He's still way underwater here at minus 19 points. He's 28 points underwater with independents. Joe Biden ended his term as president, is quite unpopular, and he remains quite unpopular. He is an anchor to the Democratic Party and potentially their fortunes in the 2026 midterm elections.
How does that compare to other former Democratic presidents?
Okay, let's go back through the history books. I went back through the spreadsheets, right? This is essentially what we're looking at. Former Democratic presidents' net favorability at this point post-presidency. The lowest by far is Joe Biden, 19 points underwater. Barack Obama was a rock star, 31 points above water. How about Bill Clinton? Wasn't so popular after office, but even then he was just 3 points underwater, basically breaking even. And then Jimmy Carter was 22 points above water. Joe Biden, the most unpopular former Dem president at this point post-presidency of any Democrat that I could find going through the spreadsheets over the last 50 years.
How's Dr. Jill Biden doing?
Okay, so Joe Biden, obviously not Joe Biden, though they are married. Okay, just look at this. Was she a popular first lady? Dem first lady's net favorability at the end of their final term, she was just 2 points above water. Obviously not as bad as Joe Biden is, but Michelle Obama was 43 points above water. Hillary Clinton was 13 points above water. Again, you're just looking at this and you're seeing that Joe Biden was historically unpopular for a Democratic first lady compared to the two other Democratic first ladies you see on the screen, which again matches what we see with Joe Biden's unpopularity.
Part of this might just be this recent shift sort of against the idea of establishment. What are we seeing in the prediction markets that might indicate there are some issues there?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the legacies of Joe Biden and sticking on for as long as he did is distrust of the Democratic establishment. And that is why, just take a look here. Chance that 4+ House Democrats, in fact, lose their primary in 2026. Look at this, 68%. I look back at every single cycle that I could find that was not a post-census redistricting cycle. And the highest I could find in terms of Democrats losing, get this, was only 3. So this would actually beat it. Democratic angst against the establishment at an all-time high, I think in large part driven by the fact that Joe Biden is so unpopular, and therefore you have just this great distrust of the Dem establishment.
All right, Harriet, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Oh, my. Those aren't good numbers at all. By the way, how unpopular do you have to be 11 points less popular than Hillary Clinton after 8 years of the Clintons? Woof. That's bad. And Harry Enton pointing out a number that you don't hear a lot. Democrats might actually lose House seats, that the betting markets are actually saying there's almost a 70% chance Democrats lose House seats this year. Remember, we're told historically and conventional wisdom is the party in total control of Congress will lose. Will lose, and the party out of power will win. And historically, that has been true, save I think like 3 times. And yet, you just heard the stats there. 68% of the betting markets now put that, or I should say, they put it at a 68% chance that Democrats will lose at least 4 House seats. Lose House seats. Now, again, I am not, as I just said, it's not as though the Republicans are lighting the world on fire. It's got their base pretty frustrated right now. And the risk for Republicans is that their people don't turn out. While Democrats, they're not particularly happy about their own. Democrats aren't particularly happy about anything. In fact, this story from the New York Post, fewer than 1 in 5 Democrats even feel proud to be an American at all ahead of our 250th birthday. This week marks 1 month from now. We'll be celebrating our 250th anniversary. The reflecting pool is filled. They just turned on the water yesterday. Looks beautiful, actually reflecting the monuments already. 2 out of 3 Republicans feel proud to be an American. This is the latest data. Those surveyed were asked what term best described how they felt when they thought about the United States marking its semiquincentennial. Is that right? Aaron, how do you say that? Is that semiquincentennial? Semiquincentennial? I've never heard that term before. 250th.
I have no idea.
Semiquincentennial. Hello. All right. Democrats had nothing good to say in this survey. Just 18% of self-described Democrats said they felt proud. Only 17% felt grateful. That tracks. I mean, gratitude is something we Christians are asked regularly, biblically, to practice. Be grateful, have gratitude. Does it surprise you that only 17% of self-identified Democrats are capable of that? A bigger number of Democrats said they felt conflicted about America. 15% said they were disappointed in America. 6% said frustrated, and nearly a quarter said they had no strong feelings. That contrasted greatly with self-described Republican voters, of whom 68% said they felt proud and 19% said they felt grateful. Just 1% of Republicans felt disappointed about America. 1% felt frustrated. 9% had no strong feelings. Democrats were also less than half as likely as their Republican counterparts to express enthusiasm in attending an event related to America's 250th anniversary. Just 11% of Democrats said they were very likely to personally participate in events and activities related to the anniversary, while less than a quarter said they were somewhat likely to participate in celebrations. That's astounding. Not only do they not feel grateful, not only do they not feel pride, they may not even acknowledge the nation's 250th birthday, a good number of them. Fewer than 1 in 5 Democrats feel proud to be an American. That speaks for itself, doesn't it? Meanwhile, the Federalist reporting on the Southern Poverty Law Center bankrolling racist social media posts while falsely accusing conservatives of hate. You've heard a little about this. A pretty in-depth write-up from the Federalist. I encourage you to read it all. The Southern Poverty Law Center worked to encourage corporations and big tech to blacklist and isolate conservatives by falsely accusing them of hate or racism. Yet all the while, the Southern Poverty Law Center was allegedly paying a source to make racist online posts under its direction. That's a newly unsealed federal indictment. You know, the great Rush Limbaugh always said the Southern Poverty Law Center might be the biggest hate group in the country. And all these years later, as he often was, Rush was right. A Colorado school district is facing federal penalties for Title IX violations, denied having 61 biological males participating in girls' competitive sports. Jefferson County Public Schools in Littleton, Colorado, swung back after the Department of Education reviewed its threat to pull federal funding unless the district agrees to rescind its gender identity policies. The district said it was shocked and disappointed by the warning, and they dispute the, quote, erroneous findings by the department that male athletes may occupy up to 61 roster positions on girls' sports teams. Their statement this week said, to be clear, the data did not show any male student occupied a girls' athletics competition role. Well, somebody then has got it really wrong, because I don't know how you get 61 biological males in one school district. How you get that number that high and that incorrect. If they're claiming there's none, then so be it. It shouldn't be hard to prove, should it? Jefferson County Public Schools in Colorado. You're on notice. One of the more disgusting stories of the week from the post-millennial, YouTubers kill their preborn baby after Down syndrome diagnosis. YouTuber and filmmaker Jesse Ridgway revealed this week that he and his wife, Ashley, ended a pregnancy, killing an unborn baby after learning their child hadn't been diagnosed with Down syndrome. In a statement posted to X, Ridgway said the couple received the diagnosis during the pregnancy and spent time considering how to move forward. He said the decision was difficult and had a major impact on both of them, but finally, she would end up getting an abortion. The choice was not made lightly, Ridgway wrote. Said he was originally hopeful after learning of the diagnosis, but later became concerned as he researched the condition and its potential medical complications. Thankfully, we had a choice, said Ridgway. From the New York Times, this equally disturbing on a different front. Scientists precisely edit human embryo genes. Scientists at Columbia University have edited the DNA of early human embryos with unprecedented accuracy and achievement that could open the way to babies engineered. I don't know about you folks. This is the kind of cultural stuff that just it's difficult to I don't know. I'm on my knees in prayer over things like this. The darkness of it is too much to bear. The Lord knows, God knows exactly what's in the human heart, and it's nothing good. And God is on the throne, and he knew before any of us ever read or heard stories like that this day was coming. So I trust that he knows in all these things, no matter how disgusting, no matter how alarming this train rolling down the tracks may be, he knows. But it's a very, very difficult thing for those of us who don't have the foresight and don't have the knowledge of what could come of this. It looks pretty dark. And is it really any wonder why Democrats are out of power and why it looks like they may well lose? That's what drives them. That kind of darkness motivates them. That's what animates and excites the Democrat Party, not the founding of the country, not freedoms. That garbage. And then this from the Wall Street Journal, like two cats circling, Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom weigh a 2028 showdown. Wouldn't that be just delightful to top it all off? That we get to 2028 and it's those two circling the political drain, squaring off to be the nominees. California Governor Gavin Newsom, former Vice President Kamala Harris have much in common. Fellow Bay Area Democrats who insist they're friends but don't always act like it. They drew broad notice in 2023's San Francisco election, leading an up-and-coming generation of California politicians. Newsom, 58, Harris 61 have shared mentors, staffers, donors, friends, and consultants for more than 2 decades. They have exchanged endorsements and snubs, each wary of the other, according to people close to them. They've been kind of like 2 cats circling each other in the alley for years, publicly speaking. We can hope. We can hope. Speaking of Democrats getting pantsed, dressed down, and embarrassed, street tough Scott Bessent, I call him, our Treasury Secretary, went to Capitol Hill yesterday. This guy also wildly entertaining, never backing down from a fight. Democrats thought they had him. Bessent having none of it. Let's go to the audio. And by the way, including some Republicans too, Tom Tillis, who's on his way out the door. I love this. He thought he really had Bessent in the crosshairs. You know, Tillis is no friend of the Trump administration. Again, he's on his way out. He's been embarrassingly defeated. He's hostile to Trump. He's hostile to the administration. And so he wants to point out that street tough Scott Bessent does, in fact, have a temper. And he has said things in reports that he's threatened people, or he's threatened to hit people, or he's gone chest to chest with Elon and things like that. So Tillis thinks, I'm going to get him. I'm going to call him out on this thing. Did you really say this? Bessent's answer, classic.
Tell Palti you were going to punch him in the face?
No, sir. I actually said I was going to kick his ass.
Good. Okay, good. I share the emotion. Thank you.
And as I said, that was last summer 25, and many teams have fights in the locker room and then go out and win for the team on the field.
Yeah. No, I was just curious because everybody's going to be showing that. I made it clear I'm not going to support Palti.
What the hell is Tillis wearing there, Aaron? Is that a bolo from North Carolina? Do they wear bolos in North Carolina? I don't know the style down there.
I don't think so. I think it's a bolo, but yeah, I don't know if that's a style there.
When did Tillis start wearing bolos? Anyway, don't you love that? Did you say you were going to punch Bill Pulte in the face? No, sir. I did not say that. I said I was going to kick his ass. See, this is what I like about Bessent. There's nothing. He's not hiding anything. He's arguably one of the most transparent and honest guys going. He doesn't hide the fact that he's a hothead, and he lets people know it. Anyway, this rolled on. It was awfully fun. Ron Wyden, Democrat senator, trying again to pin Scott Bessent, Bessent having none of it, and reminding us exactly of the Wyden family and their travails.
And I had hoped to keep this in terms of the economy. Senator Wyden has mendaciously slandered the Treasury building in an attempt to cover up his son having an investment meeting with Jeffrey Epstein to ask for funding. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Let's be clear here. Nobody is interested in the ramblings of a capo in the most corrupt regime in American history. We want to get some facts about this deal. That's what we're here for. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I will ask my questions first today.
And we would like to hear what Adam Wyden and Jeffrey Epstein talked about. Your son's largest investment position was Rick's Cabaret. So did your son and Jeffrey Epstein talk about pole dancing as he begged him for money using your limited credibility?
Oh my goodness. Isn't that wonderful? I could watch it all day. Let's do one more. Pocahontas tried her swing at it, and old Scott reminded her of the dirt on her hands too.
My career in the financial sector, and 45% of our small and community banks disappeared since the great financial crisis. Senator Warren likes to say, ooh, we might have a bank failure. She killed 45% of the small banks.
I think the Trump administration is rightly focused on creating the conditions for private sector growth.
My career in the financial
That's exactly right. Elizabeth Warren probably did more to damage small lending institutions than anyone else. Again, ESG, we talked about this week. Remember, environmental social justice. Small banks were forced to stop doing business with anyone that did not meet the DEI standards implemented by the federal government. They were told that if you lend to people who do business with others who don't implement all of this social experimentation, we'll shut you down. And that's exactly what happened time and again. The consolidation of small banks and lending institutions all over the country, swallowed up by the big ones, that's a huge problem. And Elizabeth Warren and Democrats are the ones that presided over all of that. While we're talking about politicians on Capitol Hill, just quickly, just because I didn't know where else to throw this in if I didn't, Senator Eric Schmidt and one of the stupidest people in all of Congress, Mazie Hirono of Hawaii. I mean, really uniquely dumb, this woman. She and Senator Schmidt squared off yesterday in a hearing in number 27 here. Aaron, take a listen to this.
You mentioned a few words, horrific. I think to the American taxpayer that's been ripped off by people who came to this country, to rip them off, that's horrific. You talk about bizarre. No, it's my time now. It's my time. You went over time. It's my time. Bizarre is the idea that you would be here in this committee defending violent murderers from being deported, that you would be defending violent rapists from being deported, that you would defend people who took advantage of the good people of this country, of their taxpayer dollars. That is bizarre. A terrorist who kills American citizens, you know what's bizarre is your defense of that. So forgive me if your 24 million Americans should be, or naturalized citizens should be afraid. That's ridiculous. You have no. You have nothing but fear mongering here. What I'm saying in this bill is, if you do those things, the American people, if you take advantage of taxpayers, you're not recognized. If you commit a terrorist act, if you commit wholesale welfare fraud, within 10 years, you're damn right we're deporting you. If you're convicted, it's not being accused of anything. If you are convicted in a court of law of these crimes, absolutely we should not only convict you, but we should deport you. Gone. And if you think that's some sort of like negative assertion towards me, I'll take it. I love it. That's what we should be doing more of in this country, because people are coming here and they're ripping off taxpayers. And I, for one, don't want to see it anymore. And if you want to have that debate in public, we can do it. But that's what this hearing is about, to examine the Scam Act. So I'd just like to expose a few of your lies in your most recent dissertation on the dais here.
Senator Eric Schmidt, I was just looking on social media today, and he said the Senate just passed my provision to put an end to one of the most indefensible public safety failures in America. Criminal illegal aliens sitting in jail, then released into American neighborhoods by Democrat politicians because of sanctuary policies. In 2025 alone, sanctuary cities and states released nearly 18,000 aliens from custody instead of transferring them to ICE. That's a betrayal of every American family forced to live with the consequences. My provision supercharges ICE with the resources it needs to meet these criminals at the jailhouse door and then arrest them the second they're released. If sanctuary cities will not protect their people, ICE will have the resources to do their job. This is a major victory for public safety, border security, and the rule of law. And of course, the dumbest woman in the United States Congress, and that's a tall order when I say that, Mazie Hirono, finds this problematic somehow. Also, the Trump administration yesterday at Fox Business told banks that immigration status may be considered in mortgages and credit decisions in the future. Well, now that's something. Remember, I just said, and Scott Bessent pointed out, that Democrats forced the closure of many, many small lending institutions all over the country because the government was trying to enforce upon them social engineering, DEI, ESG, all of the letters. Eric Schmidt, people like President Trump, they're simply saying, let's stop rewarding illegal behavior. Let's not release illegal aliens back into the community after they have committed additional crimes besides breaking into the country. Let's arrest them and deport them. When you violate the law, you should be deported. No one disputes that. No one disagrees with that. That's common sense. People like Mazie Hirono don't like it, but again, it's common sense. Similarly, I think most people believe that lending institutions ought not lend to illegal aliens. in the United States and shouldn't extend them credit. We shouldn't be rewarding illegal aliens with the same kind of treatment American citizens would be given. The Trump administration planning to release a policy statement that will tell banks they may consider a client's immigration status as part of their ability to repay when offering mortgages and credit cards. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Can you imagine giving a mortgage to an illegal alien? Would you? Let me ask you, if you had a pot of money that you were going to lend to people. Aaron, I'll use you. Let me just bounce this off you, Aaron.
Okay.
Let's just say you've got $1 million. You're just sitting, it's cool, $1 million in your bank account. You're not going to touch it. You keep it for a rainy day, or maybe somebody comes along and says, hey, Aaron, I need some help. Could you lend a brother $50,000? I'm good for it. I'll pay you back. Oh, one thing. I broke into the country from Guatemala. So if you could keep that between us, that'd be great. Anyway, can I have the 50 grand? How likely are you to give that over to a loan?
Not likely at all. Like, I would not even consider this.
Well, because again, just human beings, you wouldn't lend someone money that literally doesn't have citizenship, just arrived, is here illegally, has no record of where they live or where they're going to go. As soon as you hand that money out, you're probably never going to see it back, don't you? Isn't that what you're thinking?
Exactly.
Yeah. So
I'm not in the business of charity.
That's right. Yeah. And you're just a guy. You're not a financial institution. So you'd think the financial institutions ought to be a little more stringent in their lending practices. That's the sort of thing that I think the federal government has a role in regulating. We probably, as American lending institutions, should not be lending to illegal aliens. I don't think that's tough to get our minds wrapped around. The Trump administration has also unveiled a $700 million coal industry support plan using the Defense Production Act. Donald Trump Thursday announced a nearly $700 million initiative at the White House aimed at supporting the U.S. coal industry. Meeting with leaders in the Oval Office, Trump said he would invoke the Defense Production Act, which was a Cold War-era law granting presidents broad authority over industries considered vital to national security, directing federal support to coal projects across the country to save 13 coal plants in West Virginia, Kentucky, North Carolina, Indiana, Tennessee, Arkansas, Arizona, Oklahoma, North Dakota, and Wisconsin. The president announced the plan during a White House event focused on what the administration calls beautiful, clean coal. If you look at China, if you look at so many of the successful countries, they're using coal, Trump said. If you look at some of the really great failures, countries using the wind, just keeps blowing and blowing and blowing, and it'll put you right out of business. China, by the way, last year built 52 coal plants. They built about 2 windmills. The only time they build a windmill is when they're trying to sell them to stupid people from the United States and the suckers. And then finally, I'm going to close with this bit of good news this week. Well, before I close with this bit of good news, let me share with you something else that makes me happy. I do have a couple of clips that just make me smile because it's 3 people that are out of work that deserve to be out of work in no particular order. Jim Acosta, the loathsome Don Lemon, and then the haughty Scott Pelley, who we talked about earlier in the week, was fired from CBS News in 60 Minutes. The haughty Scott Pelley. They're very concerned, old Jim, who was fired from CNN, and Scott Pelley, who was fired from CBS. Jim Acosta and Don Lemon, I should say, also fired from CNN. They're also, much like Jim Acosta and Katie Couric were upset, now Jim Acosta and Don Lemon are very upset that Scott Pelley has been fired. Isn't it fun to watch all of these miserable, sad sack, loathsome, partisan, hack, leftist, pretend journalists now sit around the campfire and cry in their beer about losing their jobs? Don Lemon may be the worst. It's tough to pick a worst. But Don Lemon, of course, most recently, just this year, stormed into a church worship service and called it journalism. Don Lemon, in my view, should be behind bars. But, okay, I digress. So here's Jim. Jim and Don very upset that the haughty Scott Pelley from the bottom jaw, chewing on his glass. Very upset that old Scott's been fired from 60 Minutes and CBS News. Here we go.
As Don was saying, make no mistake, they don't care about the ratings. They don't care about making money. This is an ideological and partisan political project on the part of the Ellisons, the Trump-friendly Ellisons who now control Paramount, who, by the way, are trying to take control of WBD and CNN and turn it into this giant media conglomerate that will essentially act like a state media organization in support of Donald Trump. As Don.
What a miserable looking bunch. Nicole Wallace, Don Lemon, and Jim Acosta. Can you imagine being at a party with those people? Look at them. Look at their miserable faces. Here's a little more from Don on old Scott, bottom jaw, getting fired. Remember,
the irony in all this is,
and by the way, can we hang on just a second here, Aaron? I just like everybody to remember as you hear this, I just want you to remember Don Lemon stormed into a worship service this year and disrupted it with a band of thugs masked as journalism. He stormed into a church worship service under the auspices of protesting immigration. So as you consider Don Lemon storming into a church worship service, a clear violation of the First Amendment, consider that as he says this about Scott Pelley.
I mentioned, I forgot Barry Weiss, that she owned a journalistic outlet called the Free Press, right? And irony in that. But look, I think that Jim is right. In this moment, this is a very dangerous moment. And not only do I feel the folks who are in charge, the management, the people in the C-suites, the owners, it's their fault. But I also think that I think Scott Pelley is an example to all journalists. And if you are in that position, in a way, if I was still there, I might feel a bit embarrassed that I had not stood up. And I understand that people have obligations. You've got mortgages, you got all of those things. But I look at journalism in a very similar way as I do an attorney, do no harm, a doctor, do no harm, and you take an oath. And if someone is giving you not necessarily an illegal order, it's something that goes against journalistic principles, I don't believe that you should follow it.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening in this moment. And it's, the people who are standing up are the people who have the least power, I believe, in this moment. Maybe in an odd way, we have a power that we don't really understand. But a lot of our corporate friends are not standing up. And here you have Jim Acosta and me and others who are in independent media, and we are fighting the fight without the big corporation, without the big attorneys, without all the money that goes along with it. Mm-hmm. We're out here in these independent streets fighting it. And, people who have much more agency and influence in this are not standing up. So journalists, stand up. If you're in a position and they're telling you to do something that, like Scott Pelley said they were telling him to do,
to insert things that
don't do it.
Yeah.
Just and tell them.
Right.
And look, I think when I left, I was disappointed that the people who did not come to my defense, there were many, and they were told that they couldn't. That's what I've heard from folks, that they were told that they couldn't. But I think people in this moment need to stand up for Scott Pelley. I think people need to be a Scott Pelley instead of, one of those people, one of those lackeys who go on television every day or every night and just lie and stand up for Donald Trump, even when he's wrong. We should all be a Scott Pelley. Scott Pelley should be an example to us. We should all support him. His story is our story. If we lose the First Amendment, the freedom of the press, it is over. This whole experiment that we have towards a more perfect union is over. It is the First Amendment is the bedrock of our Constitution, and without it, nothing else stands.
I mean,
yeah. Again, I remind you, he stormed into a church service this year. Mr. First Amendment is the bedrock of our country. Stormed into a church. He also is a dope in that he just made an argument against the very thing he suggests Scott Pelley was so important and represented, and that is independent journalists. Journalists must stand up. We will lose everything if journalists don't stand up. Didn't he just go on and on and on about him and Jim Acosta and their brave independent journalism and how they don't need the big corporations anymore? So then he says that Scott Pelley and others have an obligation to stand up to these big corporate media types and tell them, no, I'm not going to do what you want. And again, when corporate media tells journalists stop being partisan and just report the straight news, and they say, I hate Donald Trump, I want to continue to report on hating Donald Trump, and they say, no, we need you to be fair because 77 million people voted for Donald Trump and they're not watching us. You need to start being fair. And they say, no, Donald Trump's awful. And they say, well, then you're going to have to get out of here. And Don Lemon and Jim Acosta and Nicole Wallace and Scott Pelley think that is unfair. That's being chilling to the First Amendment. No, that's the free market. There is no excuse in 2026 for anyone to not be able to go out and do whatever kind of journalism you want. But I guarantee you that little Jim there and little Donnie there and Nicole there, they have nothing. They have no viewers. And Scott Pelley, if he decides to go somewhere and go do something independent, he can. God bless America. You're here watching the Heartlander News right now. Heartlander News is an independent outlet. Town Hall, our great friends and partners, a great independent media outlet. It stands on its own. It stands on viewers. It stands on revenue. The only way these things work is if people watch them and listen and share them and support the sponsors who sponsor the independent journalism. Don Lemon doesn't have that. Jim Acosta doesn't have that. Scott Pelley wouldn't have that. This is a business. Journalism is important, but there's never been more readily available information to you and me than there is in 2026. You've never had more choice in where you get your information, and that is what really bothers them, folks. That's the nut out of it. If we really get down to the brass tacks of all of it, these people are lamenting the fact that they were the only place to get information. They controlled all that you heard and saw and thought, and that's not true anymore, and that makes them mad. And it's that simple. One final thought before I get out of here today, and it confirms as we wrap up the week the very good news that I have always maintained about what's going on in Iran right now. There have been very short-sighted reports about what's going on in Iran right now, and then there's President Trump who says, stay calm, all's going to work out in the end, but I'm not in a hurry here. Remember, we talked about how politically unpopular it would have been, and President Trump knew, to go into Iran, decimate them, and make certain that they didn't have not only the nuclear ambition, but they didn't have the drones to protect their nuclear ambitions. We were getting very, very close to Iran being something that we could not defend against, which means they would control the flow of oil through the strait. They could effectively hold the global oil market hostage in perpetuity if we didn't act. So we acted. And President Trump said, this may not happen as quickly as you'd like. And I know gas prices went up. They're starting to come down a little bit, but I know they went up. He was warned they'll go up. If you do this, Mr. President, he said, consequences be damned. We got to do this. He did it. And I've said all along, keep a sharp eye on what we're watching in terms of OPEC and the global market structure. That's not being talked about enough. The fact that these moderate Muslim and Arab countries are breaking away from OPEC, like the UAE, they're actually helping the United States and Israel tackle Iran and their proxies. That's a huge bit of news. The fact that they may, through the Abraham Accords, actually strike a partnership with Israel soon and do trade. We're watching a strategic realignment of energy and commerce in the Middle East. This is a much bigger story than just the obvious story of Iran, us, the Strait of Hormuz. This is a long ball restacking of the global order of things. And President Trump is orchestrating it all. And the Wall Street Journal has to admit it. For decades, the Persian Gulf's energy map converged on a single choke point, the Strait of Hormuz. And now, spurred by the Iran war, the region's petrostates are rushing to draw new lines to circumvent it. Across the Gulf, governments are pouring billions into new oil pipelines, rail corridors, and energy storage hubs to bypass the waterway in what is set to become one of the most durable outcomes of the conflict. The new energy links are part of a broader redrawing of the region's logistics maps, shifting trade toward trucking, rail, and new ports. The legacy of this crisis will result in the construction and infrastructure to bypass the Strait of Hormuz, said a commodities-based London research firm. Even if Washington and Tehran reach a deal to reopen the strait and maritime exports resume, the shift toward an export network with multiple exits will endure because the conflict has proven that robust contingency plans are essential. Well, Shazam. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it appears it might be a little more involved than what people like Scott Pelley and Jim Acosta and Nicole Wallace and Don Lemon tell you. It might just be that the president saw something bigger, broader, more global and strategic in the long run for not just our interests, which were first, but free people everywhere. And that was, we can't allow Iran this choke point. We can't allow Iran to be the control lever for the free flow of oil across the globe. It can't happen. So he's taken back Venezuela. They're going to start pumping oil out of Venezuela, and it's going to benefit, and it's going to hurt Iran. They're going to make the Strait of Hormuz just one of many ways to get oil to the global market instead of the only way. That's going to hurt Iran. Iran is being decimated slowly. Death by 1,000 cuts. It's a beautiful thing to see. Meanwhile, we continue to produce more oil too. Like to see us start building refineries in the United States. If we ever get to a place where we start building oil refineries again, that will be a very good thing. So when people ask, we produce all this oil, we're a net domestic exporter of oil, why don't we keep it here? Because we can't refine it here. We don't have refineries to do the work to refine all the oil we're producing. That needs to change if we truly want to be reliant. I think Donald Trump has plans for that as well. So that's the good news. As we wrap up on this Friday edition here at Heartlander News from America's Heartland, I hope you'll stay close by subscribing to us. Every new show, when it drops, you'll be able to catch it. If you're alerted to it and you're signed up, be sure to give us a like, too, and comment if you have any thoughts on this show or any show we do here at Heartlander News. We're glad to have you along. Hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you next time right here on Heartlander News.